Donald Trump's visit to a newly unveiled migration detention facility deep in the Florida Everglades, dubbed Alligator Alcatraz by critics for its foreboding conditions, seemed less like an inspection and more like a theatrical endorsement of an increasingly punitive immigration agenda. Flanked by Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, and a contingent of invited media, Trump praised the facility's strict and austere layout, steel bunks, mesh fencing, and heavy coils of barbed wire.
What we inherited from this guy, this incompetent man, and his administration, which wasn't incompetent, it was radical left, lunatic, communist, whatever you want to say. I know most of them. What we inherited should never, ever be forgotten. What they've made us do. This is all because of an open border policy where 25 million people flowed in. From all over the world, from prisons, from all over the world they flowed in. For no reason whatsoever. We had, when I left, we had a very powerful border. We had no problem. He opened it up day one. He just opened the border and people couldn't believe it.
That's right.
They were standing there. What are they doing? They said, go in. That's it. You look at the first day tapes. They opened it up and they said, go in, and that's where all of this began. But this is an amazing thing that they've done here.
Though Trump acknowledged the intimidating atmosphere of the compound, located in a humid, ecologically sensitive stretch of southern Florida, his tone was far from apologetic. Biden wanted me in here, he said, referring to his predecessor and legal adversary. Didn't work out that way, but he wanted me in here, the son of a bitch.
Biden wanted me in here, okay? He wanted me. It didn't work out that way, but he wanted me in here, that son of a bitch.
The visit marked a high-profile moment in what has become a defining theme of Trump's political career, an uncompromising and cruel stance on immigration. In recent weeks, his administration has stepped up efforts to crack down, projecting a no-nonsense image of control and deterrence. Multiple detainee deaths have been reported in ICE custody. Videos have circulated showing masked, unmarked agents arresting individuals on city streets, sending waves of anxiety through immigrant communities nationwide. In Los Angeles, National Guard troops and Marines were deployed to manage protests against immigration raids, despite opposition from state officials, including the governor, Gavin Newsom. In a display that critics view as politically performative, several Democratic lawmakers have been arrested during protests near detention centers. Among them, California Senator Alex Padilla was forcibly restrained by ICE and FBI agents while attempting to question Secretary Noem during a press event, despite clearly identifying himself. Back in Florida, the new Everglades facility has capacity for about 5,000 inmates. It was seized from Miami-Dade County by Governor DeSantis using emergency powers and has drawn sharp criticism from immigrant rights advocates. They cite the punishing climate, infestation of alligators and invasive pythons, and dense mosquito swarms as further examples of the site's inhospitable nature, an environment that is already flooded despite just light rain. During the visit, Trump appeared to relish the facility's austere symbolism. What was billed as a round table devolved into a chorus of praise from administration allies and softball questions from right-wing media outlets. It might be as good as the real Alcatraz, Trump quipped. He then introduced Stephen Miller, the hardline deputy chief of staff and architect of the administration's immigration policy, calling him our superstar. The far-right nationalist Miller offered a sweeping justification of the administration's efforts. Over the last 5 months, you've delivered on a 50-year dream to secure the border, Miller said. He described the southern border as a gateway for 2 billion people who could potentially migrate for economic reasons and claimed that through military deployment, legal strategies, and infrastructure, Trump has achieved absolute border security. Miller also referenced the regime's recent budget victory secured with narrow Senate support during Trump's visit, which allocates roughly $160 billion for immigration enforcement over the next 4 years. Once this legislation is enacted, those resources will allow this system to become permanent, he said. In Trump's second term, he is wielding presidential power far more aggressively than before. Backed by close allies like Stephen Miller, Trump has launched what they describe as a shock-and-awe blitz of executive actions aimed squarely at immigrants and their families, moves that would also put core civil liberties at risk for millions across the country. Miller, speaking to the New York Times in late 2023, promised that Trump would activate the vast arsenal of federal powers to execute the most sweeping immigration crackdown in U.S. history. Today, this point was proven.
What that bill is going to do for us is going to be amazing. It's going to give us more resources. It's going to let us hire more agents, put more law enforcement agents on the ground to look for public safety threats and national security threats, because that remains our priority. It's going to give us more detention capability. We need more beds. Now, Alligator Alcatraz is up. That gives us a few thousand beds, but right now we need every bed we can get. Before the Florida facility came up, we only had 1,800 available beds. We'll fill them in less than 2 days. So we need beds. We're already in the hole $500 million on detention. So we need that money to build thousands of more beds that we're going to need, because I mentioned the other day, we got over 600,000 illegal aliens with criminal convictions walking the streets of this country. We need more bed space. We need more agents to arrest them. We need more beds to hold them. And we need more transportation contracts to remove them from the country. So this bill is going to give us the resources we need to do more of the great things that the Trump administration is already doing.
At the center of the agenda is Project 2025, the sweeping plan crafted with input from former Trump officials. The proposal outlines over 175 immigration actions, from mass deportations to re-engineering federal agencies, to prioritize loyalty to Trump's vision. Trump's campaign made clear that its immigration platform hinged on one chilling promise: to carry out the largest domestic deportation operation the country has ever seen. Literally making America white again. Beyond mass deportation, Trump and his surrogates have systematically dismantled long-standing constitutional protections and family rights. Proposals include ending birthright citizenship, expelling undocumented children from public schools, and even reinstating the policy of forcibly separating children from their parents at the border. These moves reflect an agenda that is driven not by law or necessity, but by racial animus and authoritarian instincts. The effort to erase asylum protections and undermine human rights obligations is another central pillar. Trump's team has already dramatically limited access to asylum, circumnavigating international law by shutting down entry points, rapidly deporting asylum seekers, and punishing migrants before they've had a chance to make their claims. Trump's first term was rife with cruelty, but some of his most extreme proposals were reportedly blocked by officials who refused to carry them out. Among the ideas floated electrifying the border wall, adding flesh-piercing spikes, and digging a moat filled with snakes or alligators. At one point, Trump allegedly suggested shooting migrants in the legs to stop them from crossing. Well, today he finally got his alligators. While some dismiss those proposals as bluster, the administration's actual record told a much darker story. The family separation policy, which forcibly removed over 6,000 children from their parents, became one of the most notorious chapters of Trump's first term. That seems to pale into insignificance in comparison to what the Trump team has planned for this administration, clearing away internal resistance, purging civil servants, and installing ideologically loyal personnel through the White House and the Department of Homeland Security. The goal is clear: ensure no one inside the system slows or blocks the machinery of mass deportation. To deport millions each year requires unprecedented logistical force, massive arrests ignoring due process and the courts, detention centers functioning at full capacity, and the physical removal of people, all on a scale never attempted before. Because ICE lacks the manpower for such an operation, Trump plans to conscript others. He's already federalized state National Guard units, expanded the role of local police, and even allowed law enforcement from one state to carry out arrests in another. In this framework, law enforcement personnel will be shielded from liability for civil rights violations under proposed immunity provisions, provided they cover their faces and are unidentifiable. Enforcement doesn't stop with targeted arrests. Agents are conducting broad workplace raids, neighborhood sweeps, and public arrests intended to capture as many undocumented people as possible at once. Trump has brushed off concerns over using military force domestically as irrelevant, arguing that migrants aren't civilians under his definition. The deportation program Trump has employed overrides core legal and constitutional protections. The procedures involved in immigration enforcement, arrest, legal proceedings, appeals, and removal, cannot manage that volume without trampling due process. And that appears to be part of the strategy. Trump has made clear he intends to move fast and to use every tool available, military or civilian, to execute his immigration crackdown. The result is a militarized America, where communities across the country could be subjected to mass raids and aggressive policing regardless of immigration status. U.S. citizens, lawful residents, and immigrants alike are being detained or questioned if caught up in the dragnet. The use of out-of-state forces, federal agents, and deputized local police spreads fear far beyond border communities. Working people are staying home, for fear that going to work will see them apprehended and disappeared. Trump's second-term immigration agenda is not simply about border security. It's a sweeping plan to transform how power is used in the United States, centralizing it in the executive, weakening legal safeguards, and redefining who belongs. It has led to the erosion of constitutional norms and permanently altering American life, especially for marginalized communities, black and brown people, and the poor. The spectacle of Trump's visit today to Alligator Auschwitz and the policies it celebrated prompted an outcry from rights groups, Democratic lawmakers, and legal experts, many of whom warned that Trump's approach increasingly mimics the authoritarian playbooks of strongmen abroad and from history. But for the administration, Wednesday's event was less about concern for legal norms or humanitarian standards, and more about a proud affirmation of its toughest on immigration credentials yet, where undocumented immigrants are labeled criminals simply by nature of them being in America. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with MeidasTouch.
Love this video? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch and help us blow past 1 million followers.